Leela had always loved the quiet of the bookstore. The smell of new books mixed with the faint scent of coffee from the small cafe. Corner gave her a sense of peace she rarely felt anywhere else. She was a bright girl, barely 17. But with the kind of curiosity that often led her into small adventures around the city. Working at the bookstore was her way of feeling connected to the world without being overwhelmed by it. She liked seeing people discover books they had been looking for, or simply stumbling upon a story that spoke to them. Today, like most other days, she was tidying the shelves, arranging books by their spines. When the door chimed, she looked up and saw a man enter. At first glance, he seemed ordinary, but there was something about him that made her pause. He was tall, well-dressed in a tailored suit that didn't feel flashy but carried an air of elegance. His hair was neatly combed back, and his eyes had a sharpness to them, the kind that suggested someone who noticed everything. He didn't rush to browse the shelves. He just walked in with a calm, deliberate pace, as though the world moved around him while he remained steady in his own rhythm. Layla tried not to stare, but her eyes wandered to his hand. That was when she saw it, a small, distinct birthmark on the back of his right hand. It was oddly familiar, a detail that sparked a memory she couldn't immediately place. She shook her head, thinking it was probably her imagination. People had all sorts of birthmarks, but still, something about the shape and placement tugged at a part of her memory she hadn't thought of in years. The man wandered toward the literature section. Lila followed casually, pretending to straighten a nearby shelf. He picked up a thick novel and flipped through its pages, eyes scanning quickly. She noticed his hands, long, precise, the kind that seemed used to writing or handling delicate objects. She caught herself thinking about the birthmark again. There was something oddly comforting about recognizing a detail, yet confusing, because she had no idea why it seemed so familiar. He approached the counter with the book and placed it down gently. Lela took it and rang it up, her hands feeling a little clumsier than usual. "That'll be $15, she said, trying to sound normal. He smiled, a polite, controlled smile. "Thank you," he said, his voice smooth but not overbearing. "Do you have any recommendations?" "I enjoy stories that are well written, but not too predictable." Layla blinked, surprised by the question. Most customers didn't ask her for advice. She shrugged slightly, trying to act casual. "Well, if you like surprises, there's a new author over in the fiction section. Her stories are ... different. Interesting twists. You might like it." He nodded and walked toward the fiction section, leaving her standing there with a flutter of curiosity and something else she couldn't quite name. She watched him disappear between the shelves and felt a strange sense of anticipation. It's like the start of something she didn't yet understand. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him. At home, she opened a photo album her grandmother had given her years ago. Flipping through pages of black and white pictures, she came across a photo of a man she didn't recognize immediately. Then, she saw it, the same birthmark on the back of his hand. Her heart skipped a beat. She remembered her mother mentioning a brother she had lost contact with, someone who had gone away when she was very young. Could it be possible? She shook her head quickly, thinking it was too much of a coincidence. Yet the memory was there, clear as day. The next day at the bookstore, she couldn't help but wonder if he would come back. She imagined all kinds of scenarios. Maybe he was just a visitor to the city. Maybe he was someone completely different. But the birthmark kept tugging at her memory. It was the detail she couldn't ignore, the thread that made her heart pound every time she thought about it. A few days later, he did return. Leela was arranging a display of new arrivals when she saw him enter. He moved with the same calm, deliberate pace, and her eyes immediately went to his hand. The birthmark was there, unmistakable. This time, she couldn't ignore it. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. What if it really was who she thought it was? Her mind raced with questions, but she kept her composure, determined not to act impulsively. He approached the counter again, holding another book. "I decided to give this one a try," he said, placing it on the counter. There was a faint curiosity in his tone, as if he was testing the waters, and Layla felt a strange urge to tell him something, to reach out, but the words wouldn't come. She rang up the book and handed it to him, their fingers brushing for a brief moment. Her heart fluttered. I have a question for you, he said suddenly, looking at her with those sharp, observant eyes. Do you believe in family connections that go beyond memory and time? Leela froze, caught off guard by the question. She tried to respond casually. I guess it depends. Sometimes memories can surprise us, and sometimes people come back into our lives in unexpected ways. He nodded slowly, as if weighing her words carefully. Interesting perspective, he said, smiling faintly. Then he left, leaving her with a fluttering mix of curiosity and unease. That evening, she pored over the photo albums again, tracing the lines of the birthmark with her finger. The resemblance was too strong to ignore, and the idea that he could be connected to her family started to feel more real. For days, Lila couldn't focus on school or chores. Her mind kept returning to the man with the birthmark. The image of him standing calmly among the books, the way he had asked her about family connections. She remembered stories her mother had told her in passing, about a brother lost to the world, about letters that were never sent, about a life she never knew. It was all beginning to make sense in a strange, quiet way. One rainy afternoon, as she sat by the window of the bookstore, she saw him outside, waiting under the awning. He smiled and waved, and she felt a jolt of recognition. Not just from the birthmark, but from the sense that their paths were meant to cross. She stepped outside, and the rain fell gently around them, mingling with the uncertainty and anticipation in her heart. I was hoping I'd see you again, he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth she hadn't noticed before. I feel like there's something we need to talk about. Layla swallowed hard, her mind racing. This was the moment she had been unknowingly preparing for. The birthmark, the memories, the questions, everything led to this instant. She took a deep breath and nodded, ready to uncover the truth that had been waiting for her all these years. She didn't know what she would discover, but she felt a strange sense of courage, as if some invisible thread had been guiding her to this encounter. As they walked back inside, the world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the quiet hum of the bookstore and the unspoken questions between them. Layla knew that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine, all because of a small, familiar birthmark that had quietly waited for her to notice it. Layla could hardly sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man's face and that small, familiar birthmark. She kept turning over the memory of her mother's stories, the fragments she had heard long ago. There had always been an air of mystery around her mother's family, a sense of something lost and hidden. Her mother had never shared much, only saying that sometimes people disappear from our lives for reasons we might never understand. The next morning, Layla arrived at the bookstore earlier than usual. She couldn't concentrate on her tasks. Her mind kept drifting to the man, wondering who he really was and what connection he might have to her family. She found herself wandering over to the fiction section, hoping he might return, even though she knew it was unlikely. Hours passed, and she began to feel restless, her curiosity almost unbearable. Later that afternoon, as the rain pattered against the windows, the man walked in again. This time, he didn't browse or look around. He went straight to the counter where Leela was arranging a display of new books. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice calm and gentle. "I hope I'm not intruding." Lila shook her head, trying to steady her nerves. "No, not at all," she replied. Her hands fumbled slightly as she picked up a book to scan. "How can I help you today?" He leaned slightly on the counter and looked at her intently. "I've been thinking about our last conversation. You asked about family connections beyond memory and time. I believe there are truths we are meant to discover, even if we don't understand them at first." Layla felt a shiver of anticipation. His words were careful, but there was an openness in his voice that made her heart race. She realized she couldn't hold back any longer. "I have to ask," she began hesitantly. "Do you know anyone with a birthmark like this?" She lifted her hand and showed him the small mark. She had traced countless times in her photo album. He studied her hand silently, and then a faint smile crossed his face. "Yes," he said quietly. "I know someone. That mark has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. It's a detail that reminds me of who I am and where I come from." Layla felt her heart thump faster. "Could it be?" she started, then hesitated. "Could you be related to my mother's family?" There was a pause, long enough for her to worry she had asked too much. Then he nodded slowly. I have been searching for family for years. I never thought I would find anyone, but it seems fate has a way of guiding us. That birthmark of yours, the memories you hold, they point me to the truth. Wow. Lila's mind spun. She tried to process what he was saying. Could it really be true? Could this man, this powerful, calm man who seemed so out of reach, be connected to the family she barely knew? She felt a mixture of fear and excitement, a curiosity she couldn't contain. Over the next few days, Layla began her own quiet investigation. She went back to her grandmother's house and carefully examined old photographs, letters, and documents that had been tucked away for years. She discovered notes about family members she had never met, names she had only heard in passing, and stories of relatives who had been separated by circumstances beyond their control. Each new piece of information made the connection seem more real, and her sense of anticipation grew. Meanwhile, the man continued to visit the bookstore. Sometimes they spoke briefly. Other times he simply observed from a distance, his presence both comforting and unnerving. Each encounter deepened Leela's sense that their meeting was not random. The threads of fate were weaving them together in ways she didn't yet understand. She began to imagine conversations, scenarios, and moments that might come if they truly were connected. One afternoon, she decided to take a bold step. She gathered a few of the old family documents she had found and brought them with her to the bookstore. When he arrived, she hesitated only for a moment before showing them to him. His eyes softened as he looked over the papers, his expression a mix of recognition and disbelief. "These belong to my family," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I would see them again." Leela's hands shook slightly. "I think we are connected," she said softly. "I think you might be the uncle my mother spoke of, the brother she lost contact with." He took a deep breath, studying her carefully. "It seems the years have been long and filled with questions," he said. "But seeing these, and seeing you, I believe the truth is finally here. We have found each other again." For the first time in days, Layla felt a sense of calm. The uncertainty that had weighed on her lifted slightly, replaced by a cautious hope. She realized that this connection could change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Offering answers to questions she hadn't even fully formed, over the next week, they began to share stories. He told her about his life, the years spent searching for family, and the challenges he faced while trying to balance his personal and professional worlds. Lila shared what she knew of her mother's life, the memories she had of family gatherings, and the little details that had stayed with her over the years. Each story built a bridge between them, connecting the past to the present in ways that felt both natural and miraculous. Layla also noticed small things about him that made him more human in her eyes. He laughed softly at simple jokes. He remembered little details about books and stories she mentioned, and he listened with genuine interest when she spoke. The more she learned, the more she realized that the man she had once seen as a distant, almost untouchable figure was now someone she could relate to, someone who could be a part of her life. One rainy evening, as they sat in the bookstore's quiet corner, surrounded by shelves of books, he looked at her with a seriousness that made her heart skip a beat. "Layla, there is more to our story than just discovery. We have been given a chance to reconnect, to understand each other, and to rebuild what was lost. But it will require trust, patience, and courage." Layla nodded slowly. "I understand," she said softly. "I want to know the truth, no matter how complicated it might be." He smiled, a mixture of relief and warmth. "Then we will uncover it together. We will take it one step at a time, and we will face whatever comes with honesty." As the evening grew darker, the rain tapping gently against the windows, Leela felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced in years. The man with the familiar birthmark was no longer a stranger, and the past that had seemed so distant and unreachable was now within her grasp. She realized that this journey was just beginning, and that the connection they shared could change both of their lives forever. Layla went home that night with her mind buzzing, replaying every moment of the day. She thought about the birthmark, the documents, the stories, and the quiet moments they had shared. Each detail was a piece of a puzzle that was finally starting to make sense. She knew that the path ahead would be filled with questions, challenges, and emotions she hadn't yet imagined. But for the first time, she felt ready to face it all. The next morning, she woke with a sense of determination. She wanted to learn more, to uncover the full story of her family and understand the life of the man who now felt so connected to her. With the photo albums, letters, and documents she had collected, she began piecing together the fragments of a history that had been lost for decades. Each discovery brought a mix of joy, surprise, and sometimes sadness. But it also strengthened the bond forming between her and the man who had entered her life so unexpectedly. Layla realized that noticing the birthmark had been the first step in a journey that would lead to understanding, healing, and connection. The threads of fate had pulled them together, and now it was up to them to unravel the story, piece by piece, find the truth that had been waiting all these years. The discovery of her family's past and the growing relationship with the man who might be her uncle filled her with a sense of purpose and hope that she had never known before. Layla spent the next morning sifting through the family documents she had brought home. Her fingers traced the faded ink of letters written decades ago, some addressed to names she barely recognized. Each note was a fragment of a life that had been scattered by time and circumstance. She paused on a particular letter that seemed to hint at a hidden connection. Something about a young man who had left home unexpectedly and never returned. The letter described a journey, struggles, and longing for a family he had left behind. Leela's heart thumped as she read, feeling closer to understanding who the man in the bookstore might really be. She went to the bookstore that afternoon with a quiet determination. She wanted to ask questions, but she knew she needed to approach carefully. When she arrived, the man was already there, browsing the history section. He looked up and smiled when he saw her, a warmth in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. She walked over, holding a few of the letters in her hands. "I found these," she said softly, placing them on the counter between them. "I think they might explain part of your story and our connection." He looked at the letters, then back at her, a mix of surprise and emotion crossing his face. These are from my family," he said slowly. "I never thought I would see them again." "How did you find them?" Lila took a deep breath. "They were with some old documents my grandmother kept. I've been trying to piece together the family history. It seems like you might have been searching for answers all these years, too." He nodded, taking a seat nearby. "I have been. Life pulled me away from my family, and I thought I might never find them. But seeing these letters and seeing you makes me believe that maybe we can start to rebuild what was lost." Layla sat down across from him, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. "I have so many questions," she admitted. "I want to understand everything. Why you left, what happened after, and how it all connects to my mother." He smiled gently. "And I will tell you everything I can. It's not an easy story, but it's ours. We can take it slowly." Over the next hour, they began sharing stories. He spoke about his childhood, the responsibilities he had to take on at a young age, and the reasons he had to leave his home. Layla listened intently, absorbing every detail. She noticed the way he spoke about family with a mix of longing and pride, the care with which he described moments that had been both joyful and painful. She realized that this man, who seemed so composed and confident in the outside world, carried deep emotions and memories that had shaped him into who he was. Layla shared what she knew of her mother's life, the stories she had grown up hearing, and the little things that had always puzzled her. As they spoke, pieces of the past began to fit together like a puzzle. She learned about the sacrifices he had made, the challenges he had faced, and the longing he had felt for a family he could not reach. In turn, he learned about the family she had grown up with, the love and struggles that had defined their lives, and the gaps that had been left by years of separation. Days turned into weeks, and their connection grew stronger. They met at the bookstore almost every day, sharing discoveries, documents, and memories. Each conversation revealed more about their shared past, and each revelation brought them closer. Layla found herself looking forward to these meetings with a sense of anticipation and comfort. The man was no longer just a mysterious figure with a familiar birthmark. He was becoming a part of her life, a living link to the family she had always wondered about. One afternoon, as they sat discussing old family photos, Layla noticed a subtle change in his expression. There was a moment of hesitation, a flicker of vulnerability that made her heart ache. "Is something troubling you?" she asked gently. He looked at her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "I'm realizing how much I've missed," he admitted. "Not just the family, but the small moments, the ordinary days, the connections I didn't know I was missing. It's overwhelming, but also comforting to finally be here, to be with you, and to start understanding everything." Leela reached out and placed her hand on his, a gesture of reassurance. "You're here now," she said softly. "That's what matters. We can face everything together, piece by piece." He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you," he said quietly. "It means more than I can say." As the weeks passed, Leela continued to explore the family history. She discovered old journals, letters, and photographs that had been tucked away for decades. Each new find added depth to their understanding of the past. She found stories of resilience, love, loss, and determination. She read about relatives who had faced hardships, made difficult choices, and left legacies that were often unrecognized. The more she learned, the more she understood the strength and courage that had been passed down through generations. The man shared his own experiences, revealing moments of struggle, triumph, and regret. He spoke of the challenges of building a life in the public eye, balancing responsibilities, and dealing with personal losses. Leela listened with empathy, realizing that despite his wealth and status, he had faced hardships that were deeply human. She began to see him not just as a connection to her past, but as a person with dreams, fears, and emotions just like hers. One evening, as they sat by the window of the bookstore, the rain gently tapping against the glass, Layla felt a sense of peace. They had uncovered so much, yet there was still more to learn. The birthmark that had first sparked her curiosity was now a symbol of the journey they were on, a reminder that even the smallest details could lead to profound discoveries. "I never imagined this would happen," she said softly, watching the rain. "Meeting you, learning about our family, understanding the past. It feels like something I've been waiting for my whole life." He looked at her with a warmth that made her heart swell. "And I never imagined I would find you, or the pieces of my life that had been missing. It feels like fate guiding us to each other." They sat in comfortable silence, letting the rain and the quiet of the bookstore fill the space between them. Layla realized that the journey was far from over. There were still questions to answer, stories to uncover, and connections to rebuild. But for the first time, she felt a sense of hope and possibility that she hadn't known before. Over the next few days, they began to plan a meeting with her mother. Lila knew it would be emotional and challenging, but she also understood that it was an essential step in completing the family circle. She and the man discussed how to approach it, what to say, and how to handle the emotions that were sure to arise. Each conversation brought a mix of nervousness and excitement, but also a growing sense of readiness. Finally, the day arrived. Leela's mother was coming to the bookstore, and they would meet the man who might be her long-lost brother. Lila felt her heart pounding as she prepared the space, arranging books and clearing the counter to create a welcoming environment. The man arrived early, his presence calm yet filled with anticipation. They exchanged a quiet glance, shared understanding passing between them. When her mother arrived, the moment was filled with emotion. Tears, smiles, and tentative words marked the beginning of a reunion that had been decades in the making. Layla watched as connections were rekindled, stories were shared, and the past and present converged in a deeply human moment. The birthmark that had first drawn her attention had led to something far greater, a reconnection of family, a healing of old wounds, and the start of a new chapter in their lives. As the day ended, Layla felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey that had begun with a small familiar detail had grown into an exploration of family, identity, and love. She understood that the threads of fate had guided them, and that noticing the birthmark was just the first step in a journey that had changed all their lives forever. With the past acknowledged and the present embraced, Layla looked forward to a future filled with connection, understanding, and the possibility of new memories to come. after the emotional reunion. Life began to settle into a rhythm that felt new and strange for Layla. The family she had only known through stories and old letters was suddenly real. It's tangible and living around her. The man with the birthmark, who she now understood to be her mother's brother, became a familiar presence, often visiting the bookstore and spending time with her mother. Each day brought new conversations, laughter, and sometimes tears. As old memories were shared and new ones were created, Leela noticed subtle changes in herself. The emptiness she had carried for years began to fade, replaced by a sense of belonging. She found herself thinking less about the unknown and more about the future, imagining the days ahead filled with family gatherings, shared meals, and quiet moments in the bookstore. She realized that the simple act of noticing a birthmark had opened the door to a world she had longed for, and she felt a deep gratitude for the chain of events that had led to this point. One evening, while the three of them were going through old photo albums, her uncle paused at a picture of a family gathering from decades ago. His fingers traced the image, his eyes reflecting a mixture of nostalgia and regret. "I was so young," he said quietly. "I didn't understand the importance of staying close to family. I thought I could come back any time, but life had other plans." Layla reached out, placing her hand over his. "You're here now," she said softly. "It's never too late. We have the chance to create new memories together." He smiled, a tear slipping down his cheek. "You're right," he whispered, "and I'm grateful to be part of it." As the weeks passed, Layla became more involved in helping her uncle reconnect with the broader family. She called distant relatives, shared stories, and organized small gatherings. The bookstore, once just a place of work for her, transformed into a hub for family activity. Friends and relatives visited, sharing meals, laughter, and memories that had long been forgotten. Layla felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before, knowing that her actions were helping to heal the wounds of the past. Her uncle, despite his busy schedule and responsibilities as a businessman, made time to be present. He shared wisdom, guidance, and even small lessons from his life experiences. Layla was fascinated by the way he balanced his public life with his personal commitments, and she admired the patience and care he showed in rebuilding relationships that had been lost over time. Each conversation with him revealed layers of character she had never expected, and she found herself learning. It's not only about her family's history, but also about life and resilience. One rainy afternoon, as they were reorganizing the bookstore's reading corner, her uncle noticed an old, tattered journal tucked between the shelves. He pulled it out, and the cover revealed his own handwriting from years ago. His eyes widened in surprise. "I wrote this long ago," he said softly, flipping through the pages. "It's filled with thoughts I had while searching for my family. I never expected to see it again." Leela took the journal and began reading. Each entry was a window into his past, revealing his fears, hopes, and the deep yearning he felt for connection. She was struck by the vulnerability and honesty in his writing. "You were thinking about us even back then," she said softly, handing it back to him. He nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "I always hoped I would find a way back, even if I didn't know how. And now, thanks to you, I've found it." The rediscovery of the journal led to long conversations that lasted late into the evening. Leela and her uncle discussed the events of his youth, the decisions that had shaped his life, and the dreams he had once held. Through these discussions, Layla gained a deeper understanding of the challenges he had faced and the strength it had taken to persevere. She felt proud of the man he had become and grateful that she could be part of this reckoning. As the family grew closer, Layla noticed her mother becoming more relaxed and open. The tension and sadness that had lingered for years seemed to ease. Her mother shared stories she had never told before, revealing both joys and regrets. Leela saw the impact of her uncle's presence on her mother, as the way old wounds were healing and the way new bonds were forming. It was a transformation that filled her with hope and reaffirmed the importance of family connections. One day, as they sat together in the bookstore, her uncle turned to Lila with a thoughtful expression. "You know, noticing that Birthmark was more than just a coincidence," he said quietly. "It was a sign, a small detail that led to something much bigger. It reminded me that life has a way of bringing people together, even when the paths seem impossible." Layla smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. I never imagined that something so small could lead to all of this. It feels like a miracle." He nodded. "It is a miracle, and it's a reminder that the connections we overlook can sometimes be the most important ones." As the days went on, Layla found herself embracing new responsibilities within the family. She helped her uncle organize family events, maintained correspondence with distant relatives, and continued exploring old letters and photographs. Each discovery brought new understanding and appreciation for the lives that had come before her. She realized that her role was not only to learn about the past, but also to ensure that the family's stories and connections would continue into the future. Her uncle, too, grew more comfortable sharing his life experiences with others. He began mentoring young relatives, offering guidance and support, and sharing lessons learned from his own challenges. Layla watched as he nurtured relationships, built trust, and inspired those around him. She saw the transformative power of family and the strength that could be drawn from love, understanding, and shared history. One evening, as the family gathered for a quiet dinner in the bookstore's back room, Layla felt a sense of contentment that she had never known. The room was filled with laughter, conversation, and the warmth of human connection. She looked around at her mother, her uncle, and the extended family members who had joined them, and she realized that noticing a small detail the birthmark had set in motion, a series of events that brought them all together. It had healed old wounds, created new bonds, and given them all a chance to embrace the present, look forward to the future. Layla understood that the journey was ongoing. There would still be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of uncertainty. But she also knew that the foundation they had built together was strong. The love and connection that had been restored were more powerful than the obstacles they might face. She felt a deep sense of purpose and responsibility, knowing that she had played a part in bringing her family back together and in helping to create a sense of belonging that had long been missing. As the night grew darker and the family settled into quiet conversation, Layla reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The small, familiar birthmark had been the spark, but it was the courage, curiosity, and persistence of everyone involved that had truly made the reunion possible. She felt a profound gratitude for the moments of discovery, the shared stories, and the growing bonds that had transformed her life in the days that followed. Layla continued to explore her family's history, documenting stories, preserving letters, and recording memories. She understood that the past was not just something to be uncovered, but something to be honored and shared. She also recognized the importance of living fully in the present, cherishing the moments of connection and love that had been restored. Through it all, Layla realized that noticing a small detail could change a life. A birthmark had led to the rediscovery of family, the healing of old wounds, and the creation of new memories. It had shown her that even the smallest observations could hold immense significance, and that life had a way of guiding people toward the connections they needed most. She felt a sense of hope and joy, knowing that the bonds of family once lost could be found and nurtured. Again, the weeks after the reunion were filled with a sense of calm and connection that Layla had never known before. Each day brought opportunities to strengthen the bonds that had been rekindled, and she noticed the subtle ways her family had begun to change. Her uncle, once a distant figure whose presence felt almost unreal, now moved easily through their lives, offering advice, sharing stories, and laughing with them as if he had always belonged. Layla's mother carried herself with more ease, her eyes brighter and her smile more frequent, as if a weight she had carried for years had finally lifted. Layla herself found a quiet joy in witnessing these changes. She helped organize small family gatherings, prepared meals with her mother, and spent time listening to her uncle recount experiences from his youth. Each conversation revealed new layers of understanding, new lessons about patience, forgiveness, and the power of love. Layla discovered that family was not just about blood, it was about presence, care, and shared memories. One rainy afternoon, Layla and her uncle sat in the bookstore sipping tea, surrounded by the comforting scent of old books. He glanced at her and said, "Do you know, Layla, that your curiosity changed everything? If you hadn't noticed that birthmark, none of this might have happened. You brought us back together, Layla smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. It feels like life guided me without me realizing it. Sometimes the smallest things lead to the biggest changes. Her uncle nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. Yes, we often overlook small details, but they can carry immense power. And you had the courage to act on what you noticed. That courage healed us all. It's inspired by their strengthened bond. Lila suggested they document their family history so future generations could know the story that had brought them together. Together, they gathered old photographs, letters, and keepsakes, carefully placing them in albums and boxes. Each item sparked memories, laughter, and stories, giving them a sense of continuity and preserving their family legacy. Her mother watched with pride as Layla carefully arranged the artifacts. "You've given us more than memories," she said softly. "You've given us a way to hold on to our past and look toward the future." Layla felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that her role in the family was not just as a participant, but as a keeper of its history and a nurturer of its bonds. She had helped transform fractured relationships into a tapestry of connection and care. And she took that responsibility seriously as summer approached. The family planned a reunion with more distant relatives, many of whom had lost contact over the years. Layla helped coordinate the event, sending invitations, arranging meals, and ensuring that the gathering would feel welcoming and inclusive. The anticipation was palpable, and the days leading up to it were filled with preparation and excitement. On the day of the reunion, the bookstore buzzed with energy. Tables were filled with food, laughter echoed through the rooms, and relatives greeted one another with hugs, tears, and smiles. Layla observed the interactions, noticing how quickly old barriers dissolved in the presence of shared history and genuine connection. Cousins recounted childhood memories, aunts and uncles shared stories from decades past, and grandparents watched with contented smiles as their family gathered around them. Her uncle moved among the guests, introducing himself to relatives who barely remembered him, sharing lessons from his life and listening intently to the experiences of others. Layla was proud of him, seeing him embrace his role in the family fully, no longer distant or reserved, but engaged, warm, and present. Throughout the day, Layla noticed countless moments of small joy: a relative laughing over a shared memory, an elderly aunt wiping a tear from her cheek, a child learning about a family tradition for the first time. Each moment underscored the importance of connection, the value of shared history, and the joy that comes from being present with loved ones. As the evening drew near, the family gathered in a circle to share what they were grateful for. Her mother spoke first, expressing her gratitude for the chance to reconnect with her brother and for the love that surrounded them. Her words were heartfelt and touched many. As tears and smiles spread across the group, her uncle followed, thanking everyone for embracing him and acknowledging the journey that had brought them together. He spoke of lessons learned, regrets faced, and hopes for the future, inspiring reflection and appreciation among those gathered. Finally, it was Leela's turn. She took a deep breath and spoke softly. "I want to thank all of you for being part of my life and helping our family heal. I never imagined that noticing a small birthmark would lead to all of this. It reminds me that even the smallest actions can have the greatest impact. I hope we continue to build these connections, creating memories and a legacy that will last for generations." The room was filled with applause, laughter, and tears. Layla felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that her curiosity and courage had helped unite the family and create a space for love and connection. In the months that followed, life continued with a newfound rhythm. Layla, her mother, and her uncle spent their days exploring family traditions, cooking together, sharing stories, and enjoying the simple joys of being with each other. The bookstore became a hub for relatives and friends, a place where memories were shared and bonds strengthened. Each day offered new opportunities to deepen connections and nurture relationships. Layla also dedicated time to documenting their family history. She preserved letters, photographs, and mementos, creating a collection that captured their journey and ensured that future generations would know the story of how their family had come back together. Her efforts were recognized and appreciated by her mother and uncle, who understood the value of her work and the love behind it. Through it all, Leela reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple observation. A birthmark, something small and easily overlooked, had set in motion a chain of events that restored relationships, healed old wounds, and brought lasting joy. She realized that paying attention to details, acting with courage, and embracing curiosity could change lives in ways one could never anticipate. She also recognized the importance of forgiveness and understanding. The family had faced misunderstandings, distance, and regret, yet they had chosen to communicate, listen, and support one another. Through empathy and patience, they had rebuilt what had been lost. Proving that love and connection could overcome challenges, Lila knew that life would continue to bring challenges. But she also understood that with family, love, and courage, they could face anything together. The bonds they had rebuilt were strong, filled with trust, understanding, and care. She felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that she had contributed to this transformation and that she could continue nurturing it in the years ahead. One quiet evening, the three of them sat together in the bookstore, reflecting on the journey. Her uncle turned to Lila and said, "You changed all of our lives. Lila, your curiosity, persistence, and courage brought us together. We are stronger, happier, and more connected because of you." Layla felt tears of joy well up. "I didn't do it alone," she said softly. "We all played a part. But I'm grateful that something as small as noticing a birthmark could lead to this. Life truly is in the details." Her uncle nodded with a content smile. "And now we continue together, building, remembering, and loving. The journey is ongoing, but we face it united." Leela smiled, feeling peace and happiness settle over her. She looked at her mother and uncle, thinking about the family that had been restored, the connections that had been renewed, and the memories yet to come. She understood that life was full of small, meaningful moments, and recognizing them, acting on them, and cherishing them could make all the difference. The birthmark that had first caught her attention had become more than a market, was a symbol of connection, curiosity, and the impact of noticing life's smallest details. It had started a journey that brought love, understanding, and family back into their lives. And it reminded Leela that every small observation could have the power to transform a life. Leela knew that the future held challenges and surprises, but she also knew that with courage, love, and family, they could meet them together. She felt fulfillment, gratitude, and hope, understanding that the story of their family was now theirs to continue, shaped by the small, meaningful moments and the love that bound them. As the night grew quiet, Leela sat with her mother and uncle, savoring the stillness and reflecting on the journey. She understood that noticing, questioning, and seeking the truth had led to life-changing discoveries. She felt profound gratitude for the family she had found, the bonds restored, and the memories that would continue to grow. The journey that had begun with a simple observation had led to a lifetime of connection, love, and understanding. And as Leela looked at her mother and uncle, smiling and sharing stories, she realized that their family story was far from over. It was a story that would continue to unfold, guided by the small details, the meaningful moments, and the love that held them together.